All right, what is an 8757A scalar network analyzer? I'll discuss that, what a scalar network analyzer is. Just to give you a brief clue, you're used to vector network analyzer. So a vector is a scalar and an angle, right? It's a vector. And this is a scalar. So it's the length of the vector without the phase information. So that's what a scalar network analyzer is. How does it work? All right, well, why do I have one? And it's got lots of buttons, and it's very big, and it's very, very heavy. So the story is, the fellow that I bought the 8558 spectrum analyzer plugin also sold me the little amplifiers. I've gone back to him twice to buy those little amplifiers. Well, he had this as well, and he's had it listed on Craigslist for many, many months, and nobody wanted it. So I got it for free. Yay! So what am I going to do with it? Well, I've got some plans, but let's take a look inside. Let's don't turn it on, tear it apart, right? Or take it apart. That's right. Don't turn it on, take it apart. Okay, let's take a quick look at the front panel here. We have channel 1, channel 2. We have A, B, and R. So we have 3 channels and only 2 buttons. That's kind of interesting. Measure, cursor, display, average, scale, calibrate, reference, special, SPCL, I guess. A knob, steps, buttons, all kinds of stuff, right? So if you're making a measurement in a network, you usually have an input and an output, so you have A and B. And so if you want to measure, say, S21, you might say, oh, well, I want to know how much power is being input, how much power is being output. So these are generally used with couplers, right? So the amount of power going in, you might have a coupler to sample that, and that goes into A. And then the amount of power coming out of the device, you might have that going into B. And then maybe the return loss from A, you put into R, R for return loss. So you can do a lot of things with this, like SWR, return loss, sweeping a filter, all those other things like that. But this is really super, super accurate, much, much more accurate than any other device that I've shown on the channel so far. That's because it uses power sensors. It actually uses either thermistor or diode-based power sensors. Diode probably because this is going in a sweep mode, so diode detectors. So you'd need 3 diode detectors. So it's very, very expensive to run on one of these things. You need 3 detectors, which are like $1,000 each, right? Even on the used market. Plus you need couplers, plus you need a tracking generator. So this does not have any source output, so you need a tracking generator. Now, these are set up so that they automatically talk to the tracking generator. So when you push the buttons on this, it automatically changes the settings of the tracking generator. But that's, so you bought one of these for $20,000, you bought a tracking generator for $20,000, you spent another $15,000 on sensors. This is a really expensive piece of kit. But what you get is something that's super, super accurate, okay? It's really accurate. So let's take a peek inside. Well, I took the top off, and the first thing we see is a big CRT, a giant CRT, and some cool circuitry in the back. A bunch of fuses. I guess those are for the individual supplies. They put them right on top here, so you could easily change them out. See if I can look in there. I need to be on the other side. Oh. Yep. +5, ±15. Yep. All right. The CRT is marked in German, which is interesting. See if I can flip over there and show you that. Can you see the German? There it is. Sorry, it's a little sideways. Yeah, cathode something or other. So there's a date, 1991. Interesting. And there is the various supplies. And then over on this side, are the cards, and they are labeled CPU, ADC, HPIB, and a A5 mod, MOD, I don't know what that is, and then log amplifier, log amplifier, log amplifier. So as I described, there's the A channel, B channel, and there was an option for a C channel and an R channel, right? So these are identical. They're all basically power meters within the instrument. And I loosened the screws so I can take this off. Look inside. And so let's unplug the instrument first, just a second. Just in case there's any residual power in there. I don't know if it's a real on-off switch or a fake on-off switch. Here's one of the cards. These three are all identical. So there you go. The input's going to go through a chopper stabilized front end, so that's probably in this can here. So very, very low voltages you have to deal with out of a detector. So chopper stabilized amplifier, a bunch of little parts in here, a bunch of analog parts. So you have to do a lot of filtering, and you have to do a lot of offset correction and stuff like that. And it looks like there's a custom chip here, a HP custom chip. So you couldn't repair this. You'd have to get an HP part. Anyway, so there's three of those that are identical. All right. We have a HPIB card, GPIB, IEEE 488, whatever you want to call it. And it's a double. So if you look on the back of the instrument, there's two connectors. One connector for the instrument itself, so you can control the instrument. And then one connector so the instrument can control the sweepers. So it can talk to sweepers, and then you can talk to it. So two of those. There's the strange Mod 5 card. Oh, nothing on it. Okay, can you see that? Cable's kind of in the way here. So, not much going on. Real high precision part there, like a really funny little, so some kind of high gain amplifier of some type. Don't know what all's on here, but it looks like just one amplifier on a board. It's probably the buffer amplifier before the ADC. That would be my guess. Pop that back down in there. Oh, oops, I lost my little grommet. Grommet has to go on that card cage right there. Okay. All right. This is the ADC card. Probably a lot of money on this card. This was probably very, very expensive in its day. A Burr Brown 2D546, probably a 16-bit, really fast A to D. Somebody got their fun designing this card, I'm sure. All right. And then, it's the CPU card. I'm going to guess, I'm not going to look, 68,000 microprocessor, because HP always puts 68,000 microprocessors in everything. There it is. Motorola, in the nice big package, not one of those little funny packages, the real deal. Ceramic too, nice. Lots of ROMs, Rough 2.0, 1986, yikes. Oh, they didn't mod the software very much. And then a bunch of RAM and battery backup for the RAM, I guess. Data Sentry. Yep, anyway, that's it. So, back in the day, if you were somebody like me, you just loved this stuff because it had all the things that you knew how to do. This is not plugging in. Why is this not plugging in? My real forte back in the day was I knew something about microprocessors, and they were quite new back then. So I was very good at embedded systems. So something that required you to control it with a microprocessor wasn't something everybody could do at the time. So I was really good at the microprocessor part, the ADD part, a little bit of the analog part. I was no whiz analog guy, but I certainly could take data, digitize it, put it into a microprocessor and do something with it. So yeah, that's what I was good at. All right, so this is the underside of the the chassis. So here's the power supply. Wow, it's a giant thing. Oh my goodness. I had no idea it was going to be that big. It takes up half of the width of the chassis and the entire length of it. Oh man. Anyway, yeah, AC comes in the back and there's a huge bridge rectifier. Well, there's a transformer on the other side, a big block, big transformer on the back. And then it comes in here and there's filtering, and there's big bridge rectifier, nice big capacitors, all Sprague, lots of fuses, adjustments for everything. Yeah. Test points on there, all the things, all the pass transistors. There's even a thermal cutoff switch here. It gets too hot, I guess it turns off. Nice. Wow, that is just giant. So this is when HP used to design their own power supplies. This is what HP did. Yeah, nobody else built this thing, that's for sure. Man, it's a bruiser. Okay, so let's zoom down here. This is cool too. So over on this side is let's see, can I get in a little? I can get in a little bit closer. Yeah. So this is the this is basically the video card. This is the XY driver for the CRT. And so it says Y out and X out amplifiers. So these are the amplifier circuits. I think it's high voltage output. I think it's like a 100-volt output. And then this is all of the digital to XY raster video. So I think these special chips here are probably character generators. And then it's got 4 D to A converters. So it runs all in parallel. So the problem with digital processing is that everything has to be one at a time. But if you're doing analog processing and writing to a display, you can have your 4 analog channels all running in parallel and then just sum at the XY stage. So yeah, so this thing would be screaming fast. But anyway, look at all the adjustments. Oh my gosh. Oh my gosh. 2, 4, 6, 8, 10, 12, 14, I don't know, like 30 adjustments. Crazy. Oh well. Yeah, this is a monster. You know, just don't build them like this anymore, and probably for good reason. Anyway, that's the underside. Let's button it up and we'll flip it over and see if we can't power it up. All right, when you power this thing up, it does a self-test, and then it says repeat tests, service menu, or measurement menu. So in order to use this thing, you actually have to push the measurement button, and then you get, you get this. So 1986, pretty cool stuff. We get some traces. And like I said, it's got 3 inputs here, A, B, and R. And I'm not going to be able to do much because, let me get a little piece of wire here. I'm not going to be able to do much because I don't have sensors for it. But what I do have is I have a piece of wire. And I'm going to put the piece of wire here in pin 1. And that magic pin 1, if you look over here, if I touch it with my finger, woo, the signal goes up. And if I move it over to the B port, then the other display goes. So those are the A and the B channels. Those are obviously the analog inputs to those things. Yeah, so this thing has measurement mode, has a cursor that I can move. We move the cursor. It has display functions, averaging. We turn averaging on. And oh, that one got real quiet. We'll do channel 1, average on. And now that one got real quiet. That's kind of cool. Now I'm going to touch it and it goes up. And I'm going to untouch it, it goes down. Turn averaging off. So that's cool. We have scale. You can change the scale provision. I could say 10 dB, or I could use the wheel to make the scale change. There's a calibration routine, short, open, and through. That should look very similar to your VNA. It's a scalar. It still needs to know shorts, opens, and throughs. There's a reference. I can change the reference position, a lot like the reference things on spectrum analyzers. A special menu, smoothing. You turn smoothing on. Ooh, that's very smooth. Huh. Turn smoothing off. Smoothing aperture, 5%. Oh, cool. You can change the smoothing. That's kind of like the video bandwidth on a spectrum analyzer. And yeah, so there you go. So it does function. If I had some sensors, I could do VNA stuff, SNA stuff, but that requires me to have a generator too. Not a tracking generator, but a HPIB controlled generator. A friend of mine's got one. Maybe he wants, I don't think he wants this thing, but he has a VNA that's set up the same way. As you need a separate generator to make it work. Anyway, there you go. Brief introduction to the HP8757A Scalar network analyzer.